Welcome back, everybody. It is time to do a build breakdown on my 1995 Mitsubishi Montero SR. This is my Gen 2 that I affectionately call the Hooptero. Now, if you saw my other video, you know the backstory of it, how I bought it for bone stock and really cheap. And I've done a ton of work to this. So the whole build philosophy of this is I wanted a rig that was really capable on the trail. I wanted to go anywhere, and I wanted to build it with that in mind and not make it be an overland rig or even a daily driver or anything else. Like, I want it to just be an off-road rig. So there's a lot of things I've done, and we're going to go through those modifications. Like with my Gen 3 video, I'm going to do specific highlights of wheels, lift, and tires, suspension, some of the interior work, whatever. And so let me know what you guys want to see for that. But let's just jump into a build overview. I'm going to start from the ground up and tell you guys about this. So starting with the wheels and tires, these are 35-inch tires. They are technically 315, 75, 16. And so I went to the 16s because it allows me to run bigger brakes from the Montero Sport. So I've got bigger brakes and rotors in the front, stock in the rear, but I've got 16s and a 35 here. And the wheel size is going to be a 16-inch by 7.5 wide. And then it's got a it's got a 4-inch back spacing. If you've seen this car before, you might have noticed I had bead locks on it before. And that's how I got this back spacing. That's how I figured out kind of the size with the fender flares. Like, there's just a little bit of poke, but it fully stuffs in its current configuration. So they're pretty wide, and I'm running the narrow wheel partially because I got it for free. And the other side is I like the narrow wheel because it just means it's going to de-bead less. These are steel wheels. They do a pretty good job. But that's what I'm running for tires. I really like the 35s. They fit great. And these are Toyo MTs for tires. I don't know what brand the wheels are. There's some steel wheels that I've painted gold. Let's talk about the hubs in the front. We got ASIN manual hubs, and the reason I'm running the ASIN hubs is because they allow me to lock and unlock the front end, which is mostly helpful because I've also re-geared. So I've got sport diffs in this. The rear third member is from 2004 Sport, so they're 4.9s, and the front is also from a 2004 Sport, also 4.9. But I have what's called a non-disconnected front end, so it's connected, which basically means that there's no mechanism that slides back and forth to lock four-wheel drive in. All of that happens at the transfer case. So this allows me to unlock the wheels for better gas mileage, but it also allows me to lock just one or the other if I break a CV or if I do something crazy, blow up a diff, blow up a driveline. I can kind of eliminate that whole system at the wheel. So there's the tires, the wheels, the hubs, and the diff. So again, they're re-geared to 4.9, which is a great one for this size tire. And now I want to talk about the armor. So I've got full skid plates pretty much from the front all the way to the rear. In the front, I'm running an ADD, Adventure Driven Design, front skid plate with the winch cutout. I've also got his mid skid plate for underneath the oil pan. As you can see, they're a little dented. I made my own transmission skid plate out of 2 pieces of 1/4-inch aluminum that I very poorly welded together. That's also bent. Stock transfer case skid. And then here in the back, I wanted to get an ADD skid, but honestly couldn't find one when I needed it for a trip. So I made my own. And it's kind of a primitive bracket, but you can see it goes down from the gas tank, mounts, bolts right here, runs a piece of aluminum that I bent with a tractor, and then it comes to the rear. This has done a pretty good job, and I've taken some pretty good hits on it. It has kept my tank in good shape, and it's worked. Like I said, little primitive, not as attractive as the ADD one, but it worked for me, and that's what I got going on right now. Also, panhard bar painted gold, but that's just for fun. All right, let's talk about lockers and gears. I already mentioned the 4.9 gears. I knew I wanted to have gears in this. 4.9 is the biggest gear set you can fit without changing out the entire front diff for a Gen 1 third member. Didn't want to deal with that, so I got 4.9s. The other thing I got is a TRE front locker in here. So I did the TRE air locker, and I really like it. It works super well, has a compressor, which I'll show you under the hood. So it's locked in the front, factory air locker in the rear, still works great. Probably my favorite modification, though, is the transfer case gears. Everyone talks about transfer case gears and how they're great. Here's your transfer case. And people don't want to pay for them because they're like $1,400, but they are well worth it. So I have the 315 transfer case gears in here with the 4.9s and the lockers. This thing will climb up a wall. So I'm pretty stoked about that. I also have these sliders. These are off of a JK. I cut them down because the JK is a little longer. So I cut them down to fit, angled them up, and I just welded them straight onto the frame for maximum strength and to get them out of the way. Let's talk about lift. In the front, I am running stock torsion bars. They are stock torsion bars that have been cranked up. And honestly, it's pretty good. It fits pretty well. You can see there's a little bit of space between my bump stop on the top and the control arm. I did cut those to accommodate for that, but it makes for a soft ride as it is right now and gives me enough lift to clear stuff. In the back, I've got Old Man Emu springs, so the HD springs. They do a great job. It's about a 2-inch lift on this current setup. And then in the back, I'm running, I think, Bilstein shocks in the back. And the only reason I'm doing that is I blew the stock ones, because in the front, I'm running the stock adjustable ones. So these ones are adjustable from the factory for like hard and soft compression, and they still work, and they're great. So I really like that. And I actually just ordered up some for the rear so that I can run that again, because I really like the adjustability. Along with that, I've got a 2-inch body lift. So you can see right there, homemade body lift, 2 inches. 2 inches is a pretty good amount. That's how I cleared 35s in the first place. And it doesn't make for too much weird stuff as far as like the transfer case lever still works. You got to do some bumper adjustment. So you can see right here, there's a bumper gap and in the rear. But other than that, it's pretty easy to do. 3-inch, you get into some trouble, but I decided to go 2-inch so I get that body off to clear these tires. Let's talk about this under here. Under here, you see I have a hitch receiver. You notice a winch is supposed to go right there, but I relocated this and I actually put a hitch receiver because I run a detachable winch. So it's on a carrier, you slide it in here, secure it with this hitch pin, and then I actually have a plug-in for it. And then this is the disconnect from the battery. So I can drop a winch in here and use it, and it's really strong. I've used it to pull myself straight up a wall, connect it with that. But what that does is it allows me to keep the weight of the winch in the back and not hanging off the front. There's advantages and disadvantages to that, but I really like it for now because it allows me to run a winch here and in the back, or put my winch on someone else's car if they're in a sticky situation. I also have a light bar up here. It's okay. I wish there was a better one, but I wanted something that was going to be sleek and out of the way. I didn't want to put anything that was going to block my grill. The other thing you'll notice is I've got a 2-inch body lift, but the bumpers look stock. I did that on purpose, and I left them stock because I want this to look like a Montero. I didn't want to kit it out and put a bunch of steel everywhere because 1, it adds weight, and 2, I think it looks different. Now, some people love that. Some people want it to look really built, but I think these are already steel bumpers. I'm going to bump them into things. I'm going to use them as bumpers. I might as well run them. And so that's kept costs down, but it's also kept them looking nice. And then I rhino lined it, and you can see I'm not afraid to scrape it up. If that's what it takes to get over an obstacle or get around the trail, that's what it takes. So that's what I got going on here. To make this fit in the rear, I also did a frame chop. This one I'll go into a lot more detail in another video, but you can see the frame was here and now it's up here. I basically cut it here, slid it up, welded it, put in a triangle right here, scab plated it, and locked this thing in place. And so I've relocated the whole frame, which brings the whole rear end up 2 inches. So there's no body lift on these rear body mounts, but there is a body lift up here. And then I also relocated the gas tank 2 inches up. Highly recommend that if you're running a body lift. It allows for so much more departure angle, which is really good. So that's what I got going on with the frame. So that covers wheels, tires, lift, armor, and gears, as well as a frame chop. We don't forget the sport brakes. Let's go around here, talk about the back. Open up the back. I still got to have a little bit of hoopty in it, even though it's a built rig. I got a stop sign table, drops down. Shout out if you know the Mighty Car Mods, Rodney the piston, because I blew up a piston in this, or I blew out a rod. Here's a table for camping and stuff. Got the quick fist. And then this back area is just pretty much storage at this point for all of my really heavy stuff. You know, I've got a bunch of spare fluids and stuff in this Pelican case. I've got a subwoofer back there, So I've got a full stereo system in here, recovery bag, and that's where I keep my winch. It's nice and low. It's underneath this platform. So if I get in a crash, none of this super heavy stuff can go flying. That's the idea, at least. And so the winch stays down here, recovery bag, and this thing full of different parts and whatever. And then over here, I've got a separate battery. I've got an AGM second battery. And just like in my Gen 3, I love running the second battery. It's great for stuff like charging your phone or specifically running a fridge. But this one can stay inside because it's AGM. And so it's not going to off gas. Got a couple wires, like I got the fridge hooked up here. This guy's for my solar panel and whatnot. Up here, I've got a bunch of tools. This is my mobile tool case that I made to travel with me. Over there, fire extinguisher. This could be converted into a sleeping platform if you wanted. You fold the seats flat and you can put another thing on top. That hasn't been how I use it because there's just limited space in here. Unlike the Gen 3 where all of this is able to be used as storage, this is all you've got. And so I prefer sleeping up there, which I'll talk about in a second. But this is kind of how I've used this. It's just a divider to keep things separated and whatnot. Let's go around front. I haven't done a whole lot up here. Put on a seat cover, and I'll put a seat cover over there, as well as a heated seat pad on this. So a little bit of heated seat, which is nice. Jumping in here, still under 200,000 miles, but just barely. I've done a couple things up here. First one that you'll notice is this is my second battery right there. Second battery plug out, or what do you call these? Outlets. So I got the voltage readout right there. And then this is a hot plug all the time, so I can charge my phone or a flashlight or run lights or whatever. That's right there. That's running all the time. CB radio is up here. And then I mentioned I have a full stereo in this. So I've got an amplifier that runs the speakers up here as well as that subwoofer. And it sounds pretty good in here. Again, adjustable suspension still totally works. It will work front and rear just as soon as I get the other shocks that I need. So the other thing that I mentioned up here, here's my lockers. They're the front locker. So there's the compressor, and that's on for the TRE locker. I'll do a full review of this. I think it's a really good product for what it is. I think it cost me like 650 bucks, and it works pretty well, and it's integrated well, so it's kind of nice and out of the way. It's not going to just glare at you all the time. So now let's pop the hood and show you guys what I got going on there. As I mentioned in my last video, fully rebuilt 3.5 double overhead cam engine with the gold valve covers to match the wheels just for fun. So I fully rebuilt this. It's been running like a dream, doesn't burn or leak any oil. Pretty stoked about that. Over here, I've got my air compressor for the TRE locker. Got that. I've also got an air line. This comes down and runs through the bumper, and that allows me to air up my tires. Use the compressor to air up my tires. And then the red lines are for the front locker. Over there, I have my battery isolating switch. I run that 1 gauge wire all the way down on the inside of the frame, all the way to the back there. This is a circuit disconnect or a circuit breaker for the locker. That way, if it gets too hot, you can just pop it back into place once it cools down. And then I've got a bunch of wires up here. These really thick ones, these are for my winch. So they run directly from the main battery down to the winch. And then I've also got a Spall fan in here. I don't remember the number, but this thing, I replaced it. I pulled out the old one and I put in a new Spall fan, and it moves a ton of air. I've got that on a thermal switch right here. It runs to this guy right here, which is not, it's pretty preliminary right now, but it runs, and basically when the motor starts to get just a little bit hot, it kicks on the AC fan, even when the AC is not running, and it cools everything down. I haven't had any trouble with this thing overheating since putting that in. So that's pretty rad. So other than that, I don't have a whole lot going on in the engine bay. I've kept it relatively stock, and the reason I did that is for reliability. I didn't want it to be super overbuilt or anything. I just want it to run. You will notice I still have the hood lights. They're on this this switch right here. Love that feature. Makes it really nice for working, even if you're just outside your own garage. Super, super nice. All right, so moving on from there, let's talk about the roof. I will just talk about the roof for a little bit because this is a Go Fast super light, and I love it, but I'm just borrowing it from a friend. So this isn't mine. This isn't included in part of the build, but that's what I'm using right now. It's on some Yakima roof rack rails, and this setup works super well, and I like it. I don't like rooftop tents because they're heavy, but this whole setup with the awning over there is 100 pounds, and you barely notice it on top of your car. So I've really liked that. My wife and I are trying it out, seeing if we want to buy one. It's a great way to get up and get out of this space so that you can just shove all your stuff in there. We live in bear country, so we've got to keep all of our food and stuff that smells inside the car. This allows us to get up out of the, I don't know, off the dirt where there's rocks and stuff, and have a nice place to camp, as well as it's just fun. Having a rooftop tent is just fun to look out on those views. I should also mention, I tinted the windows. That was a big deal for me because when I first got it, the windows were pretty crappy. So that's the build. Now, let's talk numbers, because I think that's a really important deal to me, because I spent $400 on the car, and then I put about $150 into it. So I had $550 into it when I started building this. The crazy thing is I've kept track of every single purchase I've made for this car. The lockers, the brakes, the diffs, everything that I've done to this, including the engine rebuild. I have kept track of all of that stuff. And at this point, without the rooftop tent, I've spent just over $5,000 on this car. Now, there's two ways to look at this. Either I have a really rad, really amazing, really capable car for $5,000, or I just dropped $4,500 into a $500 car. There's kind of two ways to look at it, but either way, I think $5,000 for something like this, that's all the way locked up. It's got gears, it's got armor, it can go anywhere, and that we can take it, I'll drive it across the country. That's a pretty good deal. So I think it's been totally worth all the effort that I've put into it. This is an incredible rig for $5,000, including the engine rebuild. And I'm probably going to continue to spend money on it just to get it up to where it is. But that just goes to show you guys, like, you don't need to spend a ton of money to get out and have a good time, to get a capable rig. You need some skills, you need some friends with some skills, but that's all stuff you can learn along the way. And so I wanted to let you guys know that's how much I've got into this right now, whether you view it as I spent a lot of money on a cheap car or I've got a really good car for cheap. Either way, that's how much money I have into this thing right now. So guys, there's a lot in this build. There's a lot in this car. There's a lot of work, and this one's ongoing. So I'm still building certain parts of it. I'm still working out the kinks. I'm sure there's something I forgot at this point, but that's my Hooptero, the 1995 Montero SR. Let me know what you guys want to see a more in-depth video on. Let me know what you want me to get into, and I'll start cranking those out, and I'll see you on the next one.